Today we have with us senior advocate Mr. Chetan Kapadia with us. Thank you so much, sir, for joining for this conversation. Beginning with the event, sir, firstly I would want to know your views about the exhibition and the insights of Guruji.
So I have two words, to begin when I want to elaborate upon what I felt today. Enriching and enlightening. Enriching for the individual and enlightening for the human brain. That is how I would describe, today afternoon. The exhibition is an eye-opener. It takes us back to history, the ancient practices, how kingdoms were run in our country, and learnings from how culturally we were so advanced and we seem to have, instead of picking up from those learnings of our cultural and national history of the last 3, 4, 5,000 years, chosen to borrow practices from the West while framing our constitution. It's indeed an eye-opener and an extremely enlightening experience. So far as Guruji is concerned, I can endlessly talk about him. His calm demeanor, his deep sense of spirituality, and most importantly, despite being a man from the spiritual world, his real, true, wide understanding of how the world operates, how the world works, and what are the changes that today's world requires in terms of governance, in terms of life, in terms of living, for collective growth and individual growth of everybody in and around us.
We spoke at length about land acquisition. We spoke about the compensatory measures that we currently have. So speaking of the 1894 Act and now the 2013 Act, how do you see that we have come forward in inculcating our initial cultural values of preserving our land and everything in our today's legislation, and how do you think that we can improvise it further, in the sense create that kind of balance of our cultural values related to land and our constitutional aspects protecting land as such?
So there is a legal answer, Sakshi, on this, and a practical answer.
Right.
The legal answer is that, our land acquisition reforms are necessary and attempted to be brought up to date. But they ignore that a vast population in India is dependent on only land to earn their livelihood. They have no other skill sets, and they are not educated, they are not exposed. So putting in their hand a lot of money doesn't mean that they have work from the next day. That money will be lost in little time. They will become free and probably get tempted or attracted towards vices like alcohol, like gambling, and things like that. The money will disappear in no time, and they will be, from being employed on their land, become unemployed forever, or be employed as laborers on other people's land. So that is what is amiss in the provisions of the old and the new Land Acquisition Act. So I think when it comes to taking land of an agriculturist who is dependent on that agricultural land for his livelihood, substitution of land is to some extent a necessity under Land Acquisition Act, rather than giving only money. Because by giving money you are not providing livelihood to the person, but while you are taking away livelihood which that person had. Because growth is necessary, and the government has to do what it needs to do to improve infrastructure. But at the same time, it can't be done at the cost of lives of families who are dependent on that land. That is my legal response. But on the practical side, while our laws are very good, the people who enforce our law are far from good. Money rarely reaches the real farmer. People who know about land acquisitions acquire the lands in advance at pitiable prices, and then get notifications issued when it suits them, and get money out of government when it suits them. Therefore, most of the money goes to these people who have benefit of advanced knowledge, who are close or within the government, and the poor farmer gets not much and almost nothing.
The litigation also that we see for land acquisition, it is mostly related to the rich farmers. It is never a farmer who has some few bighas of land will
Because
never
the small
go into
farmer has no
litigation.
ability of resistance, he has no ability to
Absolutely.
reach court, he has no ability to reach to a lawyer, he is oblivious of his own rights, and therefore you will never see the small fragmented landholder farmer coming to court.
One very interesting remark, or so to say, was made by senior advocate Mr. Rafiq Dada. He said that that when we go to the courts, the land acquisition officer usually gives very little compensation because he expects that possibly the other party would be moving to the high court. And then in the high court there are years that you keep fighting those cases. So I would want to draw your attention to the aspect of judicial pendency today. How do you think that the judiciary can actually maybe improvise its mechanisms, or maybe make such cases as a priority? Or if because now right to property has been moved out from that sector of fundamental rights, it is now no more there in that 191F. So now that we don't have it as a fundamental right but under 308. So do you think there should be some proactive measures from the judiciary or from the legislature to make this as a priority in terms of litigation, so that the farmers do not go under this years of litigation?
So there is a very simple and straightforward solution to it, and the judiciary doesn't have much role to play in it. Our judges work from morning to evening. They work harder than probably anybody else associated or connected with the government. They work very, very hard, and they work full time. It's for the government to appoint more judges, because like you say, you are espousing the cause of a farmer who's not getting compensation because his cases are not being taken up. There are cases of divorce, there are cases of acquittals and convictions, there are cases of inheritance, there are commercial cases. Every case which is pending in court is very, very important to the litigant who is a party to that case.
Absolutely.
But the judges can only do how much they can do in a day. And all of them, believe you me, are doing more than what they can do in the day. It is for the government to appoint 10 times the number of judges that the government has chosen to appoint today, provide them infrastructure, provide them necessary support in terms of staff, etc. That is the only solution to bring down pendency. A person can do as much as he can do in a day. He cannot do 10 times, he cannot do 100 times. Every Indian citizen who thinks that the judiciary is delaying their case is actually under a misconception. It is because of the low number of judges appointed by the government that the pendency problem persists.
Right specific society and duty specific society. So in that context, I would want to know from you, sir, how do you see our constitutional balance between fundamental rights and duties, and also the aspect of enforceability? How do you see that the duties can be made more meaningful so as to have a more democratic society today?
So the duties are an individual call of a citizen, whereas right is something which is taken away by the state. So the balance is, according to me, perfect. But at the same time, there needs to be a national awakening.
Right.
A national awakening, I'll give you a simple example. In terms of personal hygiene, an Indian citizen comes among the top 5 or 7 in the world. We brush our teeth every day, we wash our hair every day, we have a bath twice a day, we do everything under the sun. That's personal hygiene. But in terms of hygiene surrounding us, we come in the bottom 10 in the world. So while we are so careful and we attend to our personal hygiene so much, we neglect the hygiene around us so much. Contrast that with a country like Japan, where there are no dustbins, because every citizen of Japan carries a trash bag with him or her wherever he or she goes, and their entire day's trash is collected in the trash bag and they take it at their house and put it in the trash bin. That is a citizen of Japan for you. Nobody expects an Indian to do as much. Probably their discipline is superior, their approach to life is different. Even if we make a tad improvement in how we treat our surroundings, how we treat the street, how we treat the pavement, how we treat the area outside our house, I think we will move towards transformation. And it is these individual aspects which, if imbibed in an individual by becoming a law-abiding citizen, that automatically duties which are enshrined under the constitution for citizens to follow, to comply with, will fall in place.
How do you see this idea of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, and how do you see that the youth should participate in taking this forward?
So it's interesting. It's interesting because this is a public platform, non-governmental, non-religious, and actually an intellectual, exchange between people who have, the strength of knowledge, the strength of experience by their side, and raises very, very important questions. This kind of public debate is actually a good churn which leads to improved, evolved, better ideas and a better future.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much.